Hi everybody, it's Tatiana, and today I am coming to share with you my favorite reads of 2017. I am very pleased to say that it was easy this year to but to separate my favorite reads from my I like these, they were okay reads. That's not always something that's so easy for me to do, so I am very happy that this was easy to do this year. So, of course, the books are over to the side. These are books that I read in 2017, not necessarily books that were released in 2017, even though I do think there are a couple in this list that were released in 2017. So, yeah, let's get into them. The first book I'm going to share is the most recent book, I think, in the stack that I have read. This was a 2017 release, and it's one of those books that I loved, and I had to get my own copy. This is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I did not do a review of this book because it is a YA fantasy novel. Key it into YouTube. There are tons of reviews. What I will say is go into it blind as possible. Like, skip people's synopsis. I went into this completely blind because I knew I loved her writing, and I just wanted to see how she did with her next story, and I absolutely loved it. I love the way it's written. It's written just as smoothly and as engaging as her Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I'm so glad that I read it. And then it was on sale on Amazon, and I could not let this go by without purchasing it. I'm just grabbing the books. I have them in a box over here because it was easier to transport them into my office in this box. So I'm just going for the next book that's in the stack. And the next book in the stack is Bedrock Faith by Eric Charles May. This was the #ReadSoLit book for February of this year, which seems like so long ago. I do have a review of it that I will link in the cards above if you would like to check that out. This is the only novel this author has written thus far. I love the characters who live in this historical neighborhood and have their connection to this neighborhood, and the people that are in it, those that they like, those they don't like, those who seem to be scandalous even though they know nothing about it, and then everything is just set into upset and uproar when this character Stew Pot returns home and develops this fixation with one of the characters that goes on top of his fixation with what he understands or what he was taught of what faith is and what being religious looks like. And I loved this book. And if for nothing else, the reflection of one of the characters when you get to the end of the book, I just absolutely loved it. But yeah, I'll link the review of this in the cards, and I will put the link to the live show that Dee Dee from Brown Girl Reading, Michael from Michael Reads, and I did in February discussing this book if you want to check that out as well. Spoiler alert, like partial way through the live show, my video goes out because my mom calls me and I couldn't figure out how to get my video back, my image back, so yeah. Anywho, next in the stack is Bloodchild and Other Stories by Octavia Butler. It's no secret how much I love Octavia Butler. She is my literary shero. She has written one of my most favorite characters to date in The Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents duology. I also read this in February, I think, of 2017, and this is a collection of short stories that she wrote. While I expected Bloodchild to be my favorite of the short stories in here, and I did enjoy it because in that short story, Butler accomplishes something that she's always wanted to accomplish, so I just knew that was going to be my favorite story. And while I really did enjoy it, my favorite story in this collection is called Speech Sounds, and it just tugged at my heartstrings to look at society as it is at this point, where where they are in that short story and how backwards things have gone in society, and how all of that really surrounds people losing an ability that many of us often take for granted, and then looking at and thinking about how close we are to something like that, and the majority of people in this current society have not lost that ability. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And then on top of enjoying the short stories, there are also, I want to say, 2 essays that she wrote that I really enjoy, because I love opportunities to see into the mind of authors that I love, particularly Octavia Butler. And so I loved those essays, and it felt like you're listening to her talk to you. And I love that. And then also, behind each short story is like an afterword by Butler explaining what she was attempting to accomplish, or what the purpose was, or her thoughts were behind whatever the short story is that you were reading. So I also enjoyed finding out and figuring out that on some things that I thought, how I thought it was as I was going through the story, or what I thought the purpose was, or where her mind was, I was wrong. And in some cases I was right. Because I love her. So yeah. Next is The Nether Ground by Matthew Hoban. I promise I am not going to gush about this book again. I have a review. I will link it in the cards above if you want to check it out. I want to say, of the books in this list, this is the last one that I read. So I have reviewed and raved about this very, very recently. So check out my review if you're interested. Next on this list should be, in this box on this list, should be no surprise, that is Chintu by Jennifer Nansabuga Mukumbi. I read this because of Denise from Art Books Live. I did a short review of this that I will also link in the cards. A couple of things that I have figured out I was wrong about since I did that review. Mukumbi is not a Ugandan author. She is actually from Kenya, and this was not translated by Mukumbi. And I don't. I'm trying to remember who translated it, and I'm not remembering the translator's name. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I have a review. It'll be linked in the cards. Next is Bomb by Dolan Perkins Valdez. I did do a review of this that I will link. I think I have enough cards left to link it. 1, 2, 3. Yes, I have enough. This will be number 4, because you can only do 5 per video. I will say I loved this story. I loved the growth in the author from Winch to here. There is such a noticeable growth. Oh my word. And it's worth the wait that it's been between Winch and Bomb, for the growth that took place, for how well this story is put together. Like, this is what you want a sophomore novel to be. Like, sometimes a sophomore novel can feel like a second semester freshman novel. This feels like this is somebody who's going into their junior year. The way that the story is written and the setting of the story, it made me interested in an area, a city that I literally knew nothing about, other than they have really cold winters, prior to meeting the jazz singer Kurt Elling when I was in college. So, and now I'm super duper interested in the city of Chicago during post-Civil War period, when it was raised, literally the city was raised 3 feet. I want to know more information about that. And that's because of reading this novel. I am totally shocked at how much I enjoyed this. Like, I knew I was going to like it. I liked Winch. So I knew I was going to like it. But man, I started reading this and I was like, wait, is this the same chick? This was so good. Next is The Crow Special Edition by James O'Barr. This has the first Crow graphic novel, and then a new edition that was put in addition to that was done by O'Barr well after the movie took place. The Crow is like one of my most favorite vengeance movies, and I didn't know about, and I have a review of this also, so this will be my 5th card. So that'll be in the cards if you want to check that out. But I didn't know the emotional connection to Obar behind the story of The Crow and where it came from. After getting all of that information, I was able to look at the story from a different standpoint and just really appreciate it as a piece of art, as well as a story, and as well as the way that Draven is just unsettled by this total change that takes place in his life that he was totally out of control of. Next on this list is the biggest book that I read this year. It is the 3rd book in the Faithful and the Fallen series by John Gwynne. It is Ruin. Like, seriously, the chunk factor of this book is so real. I read 2.5 books because at the end of last year I hadn't finished the 2nd book. Once I finished that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to wait until Tome Topple to read book 3. And I think I did that. But after reading book 3, like, this just ripped my heart out and took me through so many emotional changes. And I was not ready nor prepared. It clenched my heart. It ripped my heart. It ripped my heart out. It made me eat my heart. It just gave me all kinds of emotions and feelings, and I was not prepared at all. And it actually had me thinking, like, having second thoughts about reading more epic fantasy, because I was like, I don't know if I could do this to myself again. I love this story, but I get so emotionally attached especially after you read books, and every single last book is 550 or more pages. That's some serious time that you're investing in getting to know these characters. This tore at my heartstrings, but I absolutely loved this book. I have a super long review of this that I even sped up, so it sounds like I'm talking like this, but because I had to speed up because it was super long and I cut out as much as I could. John Gwynne has another epic fantasy series that's coming out this year, I think. The 1st book is coming out this year. And yeah, I'm going to read it. It's set in this same world, so I'm going to read it. And last in this box is Behind the Throne by KB Wagers. This was one of the books that I got in my book bath box subscription, and when I got it, I was super duper excited because I was like number 24 of 24 holds. It was like the number of people who were waiting for this book versus the number of copies my library system had was ridiculous. But I was trying to read it from the library before I decided if I wanted, and then it showed up in book bath box. So I was super duper excited. This is tagged as like, what is it? Star Wars. This is one of the few novels that I have read recently, and I don't read a lot of space opera novels. When I do space opera stories, I typically do them as movies, not operas, because that's the medium I choose to enjoy that in, because while my imagination is the bomb, there are just some things when it comes to sci-fi that I don't think I get right. So I would rather watch it and see it as intended versus trying to imagine it myself and not seeing it correctly. But this is one of the few books that I have read where the comparison is on point. And I'm not one who's like, I want a new Star Wars or I want a new Harry Potter. No, I can read Harry Potter if I want Harry Potter. I can watch Star Wars if I want Star Wars. But this was compared to Star Wars, and it was compared to Star Wars characters, and it's spot on. And I just I've just thoroughly enjoyed, number one, how it was written, the growth of the character from the beginning of the story to the end. I can't wait to see what happens next. The entourage and circle that she builds around herself as she is learning this system that she has been running away from for so much of her life, that she is looked down on from, like the people who are in that established system. Some of them look down on her. And how she goes from one, like basically she has a to-do list, and how she goes from one item to the next, and sometimes having to backtrack in the things that she learns and the information that she absorbs and the way she processes it. I thoroughly enjoyed this character. I thoroughly enjoyed this story, and again, I can't wait to see what happens next. So, out of all of these books that I've read, I loved every book that's in this list. If I had to pick my what is for pageantry, my runner-up and winner for 2017, runner-up, winner. And that's all that I have for this video today. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend whenever you see this video. Peace out.